nature, right? According to what their forebears did, right? But all of them on that level of mankind of Adam Rishon after the sin, and just Am Yisrael on that level that Avram Avinu had reached. And then that time period of the roots was closed. And then it began the new period of the branches, right? So it's kind of like, it kind of reminds me of real estate in Israel. It's kind of funny to say that, but real estate in Israel, people came, everybody came, people came from Morocco, they came from Iraq, they came from Poland, they came from wherever they came from, and they got basically put into different neighborhoods or different cities or wherever they went, scraped together a couple of shekels, and built a house. Or sometimes they didn't, like a lot of the Sephardim, they were in Malbarot, there's internment camps that they basically made for them, these temporary dwellings. And then eventually the government built housing for them in those places, right? And now a lot of those places are in very, like in the middle of the city, super expensive neighborhoods. And, this guy was born here. We just moved to Yerushalayim last week. And, I'm not going to talk about how expensive it is to rent a place in Yerushalayim because I might faint if I think about it too much. But so we were taking out boxes, empty boxes that we used, putting the garbage can. The guy comes, and a neighbor, he says he's redoing something in his house. He needs boxes. Great. So you also live in the neighborhood? Yeah. He said, I was born here, and my parents were born here, and my grandfather was born in this house in 1902. It looked a lot different back in 1902. It definitely didn't cost as much as it cost today. Right? So he said, it's not fair. I'm an Oleh Chadash. I'm just trying to make it. I want to be able to rent a place or to buy a place in this neighborhood in Yerushalayim or in Petach Tikva or in Tel Aviv, wherever it is, right? This guy was born here, right? His grandfather was born here, so So that's what it was. Now it's a different system. Now it's a different world. It's the world of the branches, not the world of the roots, right? Our jobs are different in our starting point is different than it was for those root generations before the generation of dispersal. Each person according to their inyan, their things. ונמצא שאף על פי שלכאורה נראה ענייננו עתה ועניין הקודמים שווה, באמת אינו כך. אלא עד ההבלקה היה בזמן שורשי האנושיות, ונתגלגלו הדברים בבחינה זו, וכשהגיע קץ זמן זה, נקבע הדבר כפי המשפט, והתחיל זמן אחר, שהוא זמן ענפים שעודנו בו עתה. And even though it seems to us now that we're in the, just like Avram Avinu was a human being, just like Yaakov Avinu was a human being, we're also human beings. We're all in the same world, right? Sometimes we especially when we're trying to learn from the Torah, from the Avos HaKadoshim, so we view ourselves as in the same kind of state of being. But the truth is, he says, is that we're in a very different state of being than they were in those generations, right? They were establishing the spiritual nature of themselves and their offspring. And for us, we're born with that spiritual nature, and now we have something else that we're doing, right? We're not trying to establish that. That's already been established. Now we're starting Dalit. Umirov tuvo v'chasdo yizbarach Shemon gazar v'natan makom afilu le'anfei shar umot. And Hashem's unending goodness and kindness, He gave to the branches of the nations. שבבחירתם ומעשיהם יעקרו עצמם משורשם ויוכללו בענפיו של אברהם אבינו עליו השלום. He created a concept that a person can uproot themselves from their their inherited roots, right? They can uproot themselves from whatever nation they were born in. They can attach themselves to Avraham Avinu, right? Avraham Avinu is the one that it's in his path that we want to attach ourselves. So anyone that was born, a person who was born in any country in the world, from any nation in the world, with whatever kind of nature, spiritual nature they inherited, they can uproot themselves from that, and they can attach themselves to Avraham Avinu, im yatzu, if they only want to. והוא מה שעשה יתברך שמו לאברהם אבינו עליו השלום אב לגרים. And this is why Hashem called Avram, he's the father of converts. ואמר לו, ונברכו בך כל משפחות האדמה. And Hashem said about Avram, through you all the nations of the world will be blessed. ואולם, אם לא ישתדלו בזה, יישארו תחת אילונותיהם, השורשים כפי עניינם הטבעי. But if they don't make an effort, if a person doesn't make an effort to attach himself to Avram Avinu, so then he'll remain in his own right spiritual nature that he inherited from his forefathers. Is all this making sense so far? Yeah. The concept of Giyur. This is where it comes from, right? It's also just amazing if you think about it for a second how many Christians are there in the world? It's like 2 billion Christians or something like that.
Something like that.
And then there's like a billion Muslims or something like that, right? So these are two religions, the two major world religions that base the whole basis of the religion is an attachment to Avram Avinu, right? It's all basing themselves. It's all it's with different philosophies. Each one has a philosophy. It's like the Jews blew it, and now it's our way, right? Right, but none of them come and claim, say, we're just doing our own thing, and who cares about what the Jews did, right? The whole basis of their religion is that we're following this path of Avram Avinu, right? We're inheriting we got this spiritual inheritance, right? It's Christianity, it's Islam, whatever it is. It's amazing that it always amazes me that they, why is that such an important claim for them? Why do they have to say that? I can say, okay, the Jews have their religion. Right? You see, they're not so successful. There's only a couple million of them. Look how many we have, right? Why do they have to claim our spiritual inheritance as their basis, right? So it's clear that there's something deep down, at least in the previous generations, right, that they understood that this is because that is the chosen spiritual path, so to speak. That's he's the one that got it, right? Okay, it's an interesting point. But that's not what the Ramchal is talking about. The Ramchal is talking about that as once the nations became sealed, the 70 nations, so every single human individual can uproot themselves from whatever spiritual inheritance they have and connect themselves to Avram Avinu. Matter of fact, I think I told you guys that it says in the Gemara Maseches Yevamos, it says that when it comes to Giyur, that even though you guys know that in Judaism we have this concept of kind of pushing someone away for a little bit until we see that they really want it, right? So now in this generation, Giyur has become a lot more complicated than it ever really was, right? But in previous generations, like it says in the Gemara, that you just teach the person just a little bit, enough that they understand what they're getting into. Tell them, listen, you're not going to be a liked person if you're a Jew. You understand that? We're people that are always being chased, right? And he says, yeah, I want it. Listen to the language that it says in the Gemara. It says, miyad malinoto. Right away, you give him bris milah, right? And I believe the Tosfos asks over there, what's the rush? Let him sit in yeshiva for 10 years and learn, figure it out. In America, let him be part of the community for 2-3 years. Really feel it out. Make sure he knows what he's doing. Make sure there's not going to be any regrets here. It's very, very hard to do Giyur. It's very, very difficult, right? So give him some time. So what's the rush, right? So it says the Tosfos, because when a person wants to attach himself to be tachat kanfei shechina, to be under the wings of the Shechina, which is this very special spiritual place for the souls of Gerei Tzedek. So he says we don't want to push it off even for 1 second. Even for 1 second, we don't want to push it off, right? Right away, give him a bris milah. Don't wait till tomorrow. Today, give him a bris milah, right? It's not exactly how things run today, as here in Machomir we understand, right? But that's just to understand conceptually, right? But conceptually, what it is. It's an amazing thing when a person does this. Giyur is an amazing thing, right? It's one of the most commendable, beautiful things that a human being could do in this world. right? And according to what the Ramchal here is saying, is really that's the ultimate tachlis, right? Not that we're trying to go out and convert the whole world. That's not, obviously, that's not the Jewish way. But every single individual on an individual level, that is the Jewish way. Like it's an important thing to the Jewish people. Not only that, as you guys know, some of our, it's not, I'm not trying to turn this into a show about Giyur, which would be an amazing thing to do, but some of our greatest leaders have been either Gerim or have come from Gerim, right? So it's an amazing, Giyur is a, it's not just, I guess the point that I'm trying to make with all this is Giyur is not just like this side thing, like, we don't really care, you know, like if you guys want to, come and join, you know. That's not how it is in
I want to
Judaism.
raise a question that always pushed my head.
Just one second. I just want to finish this last statement.
Okay.
It's something that's really important in Judaism, right? But it's a funny thing because we're not, on one hand it's really important, on the other hand we're not going out and seeking it, right? And then the Gemara talks about how complicated it can be, right? And then here in Mechamir, since here there's a lot of that going on, we you know we could see how the different complications that there are and the difficulties with it and the struggles that come with it. It's a whole sugya within itself. But the nekuda that I want to make here is just that it's a very, very important and fundamental thing in Judaism that is there. It's important. It's a wonderful avenue for every individual to be able to attach himself to this, right? And it's a gift that a Kadosh Baruch Hu gave to the world, that a person is not just like an individual is not stuck because, let's say, he was born with a certain kind of temperament, a difficult temperament. Like, you guys remember we told the story of Rabbi Akiva, right? And how Rabbi Akiva was born with a very, very difficult nature. His personality was very, very difficult, and he overcame it, right? Nobody's stuck in this world. There's a way up, right? And it's an amazing, amazing gift that the Baruch Hu gave. Okay.
Actually, I remember it started in the 70s when there was a question about converting the whole Ethiopian. They wanted to convert the Ethiopian nation into Jews. But they suspected they were Jewish.
You're talking about all of Ethiopia? You're talking about the Ethiopian Jews?
No, they
Nowadays,
weren't
100 million
Jews.
people.
I don't know what happened really, but they went to the Italian rabbinate. They refused. You cannot go and make a bulk conversion because there was a danger of they would be killed, something. I'm sorry, but it's not the reason to convert. It's not because there's a danger of that. So they went to Allah and said, even he wasn't that simple because he made Gyur Rechumra to go to Gyur Rechumra, whether they like it or not. Many of them didn't like it. Otherwise, say out of it.
Yeah. Everything that I said now was like on the Jewish philosophical level. On the practical level of Giyur today in the state of Israel, very, very complicated.
Very complicated.
Giyur in Chutz La'aretz is a lot easier than it is in the state of Israel, right? We got to disagree. Disagree.
It depends.
I did mine in the UK.
In the UK, okay. Some countries, yeah. It's not an easy sugya, and you guys understand. Most of our history, at least since the time of the Beis Hamikdash, was we were just this despised nation. We were subjugated to all kinds of difficult decrees and everything. Everywhere we went, we had golden periods, but they didn't last too long, right? If a person wanted to join the Jewish people during those times, it was a clear risk to his life in many ways. Sometimes a literal risk to his life, right? So there was never so much a question. I mean, I wouldn't say never, but it was a much smaller question of a person's sincerity, right? Why do they want to join Judaism, right? And also, the world was in a very different place, right? There wasn't such a thing as atheism and secularism in the world, right? So things have gotten a lot more complicated in our generation, and there's all different kinds of reasons. And I'm not here to say, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong in the Rabbanut or anything like that. I'm definitely not an expert in any of it to be able to have an opinion on any of it, right? But I do understand that it's much more complicated today than it's been for most of the Jewish history, right? In the state of Israel today, there's, I have a Rav once said, I don't know if I want to say this on the camera, but he said that, he said, what do you get when you mix religion and politics? Politics. That's it. So sometimes things are, difficult. And I'm not saying that about the Beit Din or anything like that. I wouldn't want to be in any of their shoes. It's very, 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 very complicated shoes to be in. But it's hard when you have the religion, which is also connected to the political echelon of the government, and the decisions and the factions and the fighting and the chilukei deos, the different beliefs of all it. Very difficult. But for us, let's at least understand how the Torah Kadosh looks at it. What the Ramchal is saying here is that it's an important thing, and it's a wonderful gift that the Kadosh Baruch Hu gives to the world, right? And in parentheses, I'll add that just like it's become much more complicated in this generation, I think the religious Jewish establishment has a lot of work to do, a lot of work to do, and to change its perspective and its relationship with not only with Giur but specifically with Gerim, right? And also with Baalei Tshuva and also with Gerim. A lot has happened here. 2,000 years of Gullus, nothing was really changing. It was like country to country, and all of a sudden, within like this short span of time, like everybody just got switched back in Eretz Yisrael. We all came back, and like a million things are happening a million miles a minute, right? And so we're not updating our system fast enough to really make everything work perfectly and smoothly, right? But so we understand why it's difficult in that sense, but we also understand that there's a major need for that. Okay, all that was like standing on one foot. There's a lot more to say about all that. Let's go back. Now we're in Hey. וצריך שתדע שכמו שכלל תולדות האדם מתחלק לאילנות שורשים וענפיהם עמהם כמו שזכרנו, just like we said that as the generations are like root generations and then branches of generation, כן כל אילן ואילן בפני עצמו, so to each tree within itself, ייבחנו בו הענפים והראשים שמהם נמשכים ומתפרטים כל שאר פרטים, that there each tree, each individual, each nation is also like this, that there's roots and then there's branches, right? ואומנם ענפי אילני כל אילנו של אברהם אבינו עליו השלום הכוללים. So specifically, because when we're talking about Am Yisrael as a tree, right? So Avraham Avinu is like the tree. He's like the root. והנה הם עד 60 ריבו. The branches are 600,000 branches, right? You guys are familiar with that number, right? Shehem otam sheyatzu miMitzrayim. That's the number of Jewish souls, of the men who were like heads of the household that left Mitzrayim, right? V'naset mehem umah Yisraelit, and from that 600,000, those 600,000 souls, the Jewish nation was created, was born. V'lehem nechlaka Eretz Yisrael, and to those 600,000 souls, Eretz Yisrael was divvied up and given out, was delivered. V'chol habayim achreihem nechshavim pratim v'todot anafim hakolelim ha'ele. And all generations and all souls that come after those 600,000 that left Egypt are considered offspring, branches of those 600,000. V'hine le'ele nitna Torah, to those 600,000 souls the Torah was given. V'az nikra she'amad ilan zeh al pirko. And that's when it was considered that tree reached its maturity, meaning its form. The form of Am Yisrael.
They're going to continue to multiply.
They're going to continue to multiply. So how does that work? He's giving it. He gives the analogy of a tree. If we don't have a tree this big, but right, you have the root is Avraham Avinu. The branches are 600,000 root souls, and then each one of those branches has multiple sub branches and leaves and all the different flowers and everything, right? The Rebbe Rashab today is a Chayelu. The Rebbe Rashab talks about, not the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe Rayatz, in one of the Maimarim, he speaks about how he talks about in detail about how each kind of Jew is a different part of the tree, right? But in general, there's all of us even though there's much more than 600,000 souls today, all of us have our roots in those 600,000 branches, those root souls, right? So you can have 500 people today, 1,000 people today that all have the same, what we call in the language of the Zohar, shorish neshama, the same root soul, right? Sometimes, this could have to do, sometimes you meet somebody and you have no connection. Sometimes you meet another Jew and you have an automatic connection, right? Like, wow. Just like, before you even started speaking, you felt like, we flow together, right? It's a beautiful thing. So sometimes it has to do, says the Noam Elimelech, with the fact that you're connected on that root soul level, right? And that's the form of Am Yisrael, 600,000. And that number is very important. In Kabbalah, that number is brought a lot. And this concept of these 600,000 souls is like the form of Am Yisrael, the structure of Am Yisrael. בעולם חסד גדול עשה הקדוש ברוך הוא עם כל אומות שתלה דינם עוד עד זמן מתן תורה. Hashem gave another grace period, and he did this amazing chesed with the nations of the world, that even though really he capped it at the time of Avraham Avinu, but he gave them another grace period until the time of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And as you guys know, our tradition is that Hashem went around to all the nations of the world and he offered them the Torah. There were 70 nations. Today there's, I don't know how many nations are considered today, but on the root level there's 70 nations. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu went out to each one of them, and the Midrash talks about how, what the conversation looked like, right? What was that experience? I don't know. Like, it was like this type of prophetic experience, right? They don't really have, we don't see in the nations of the world, in their historical annals, that they have some type of tradition for that. In our tradition, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu went to each nation, he offered them the Torah. And if they would have received the Torah, that they still would have been able to pick themselves up from that lowered level from Adam, since Adam Harishon sinned. But since they didn't accept the Torah, they didn't want it. So then that was like the end of the judgment for that, the end of that capability, as far as on a national level. Right? You guys get that? Meaning, if Ishmael would have received the Torah, so all of Bnei Ishmael would have had an elevation at that time. If Edom, if Moab, if Ammon, if Teman, whatever, all the different nations, Mitzrayim, they could have had, their whole nation would have had an aliyah. And so, but once that didn't happen, so they lost that chance on a national level, and then it just went down to an individual level, that every individual human being can make that elevation, right? But he doesn't get it automatically. And then that gate was closed before them in a way that it won't be reopened on a national level. I jumped again, this is what he's saying. But it still remains for every single individual, right? There's individual branches, there's individual leaves to be able to do it. That he himself can convert, and through his own free choice, enter into tachat ilano shel Avraham Avinu, underneath a tree of Avraham Avinu. This is another amazing thing, that I'm always jealous of Gary Tzedek for lots of reasons, but one reason that always sticks out in my mind is I get to say, my name is Micha ben Avraham Avinu, Micha ben Sarah Imenu. It's mamish, and that's what it is. It's not just a what do you call it? A symbolic type of thing. That's what the Ramchal is saying here. Every single individual can attach themselves in that way. It's an amazing thing what a person can accomplish through his free choice. Sometimes Israelis tell me, I'm jealous of you that you made Aliyah. And I said, well, you never left Israel. You've been here your whole life. He said, yeah, but to make Aliyah, from your own free choice, to pick yourself up from Texas and to move to Eretz Yisrael, like, I'm jealous of you that you have that. What is chut, To be born here is one thing. It's also a wonderful chut, But so for Ger Tzedek Kol Sheken, right? To be able to attach themselves in that way, it's an unbelievable thing. Okay, Vav. We start time. לעולם לא הייתה גזירה להעביד את האומות האלה, אבל הייתה גזירה שישארו במדרגה שפלה שזכרנו. So the decree wasn't okay. Now all these nations of the world missed out on this opportunity. Now there's no reason for them to be here anymore. That wasn't the idea. The idea was just now that they are starting out on this lower level of mankind in the state of after Adam and Rishon's sin. והוא מין והוא מין האנושיות שהיה ראוי שלא יימצא אילו לא חטא האדם הראשון, which is really a state of being that really wasn't supposed to be, or it wouldn't have been if not for the sin of Adam הראשון, והוא בחטאו גרם לו שיימצא, and because of his sin he caused mankind to fall down to the level. For us it's kind of, we're talking about this, we don't really understand what this means because we only understand mankind on this level. We don't know, right? We can never, it's like if you have a person who is just like wildly wealthy, right? Like a billionaire and just lived a life of absolute, luxury, and then they lost everything and now they're living in this tiny little apartment, right? Eating tuna fish every day, and that's what that. So for them, if you could push a button and they could forget everything that came before, they wouldn't be suffering so much. Okay, it's nice, tuna fish is pretty tasty, I can get along, right? But because they have their memory of what came before, they'll never be able to be satisfied. They'll never. The PSS, the Rebbe says, he says a wealthy person who lost their wealth is such a different person than a person who never had wealth, right? He can never become. He always considers himself a wealthy person. No matter how many years he's in poverty, he always considers himself a wealthy person, and he can never get over it. And he views himself as a person who is, I'm just like right now I'm in this state of poverty, but I'm going to get back to my wealthy state. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get there one day. But if you have someone who is born multi-generational, in this state of, this is how we live. We eat tuna every day. This is our life. There's nothing more than this, right? So they can't even imagine what it would be like, especially in the generations where there wasn't pictures and internet, where you can see pictures and movies of what it's like to be fabulously wealthy, right? They didn't have any concept of that, so we don't have any concept of mankind above this. But that's what it is. Sorry, that was just a burning in my head to explain that. Lost my spot. 1 second. ואומנם כיוון שיש בהם בחינה אנושית. So even though mankind is in this lower state, but they still have this aspect of humanity to them. Even though it's so degraded and lower than it could be, than it should be. שיהיה להם מעין מה שראוי לאנושיות האמיתית, והיינו, שיהיה להם נשמה כאין נשמות בני ישראל. Hashem didn't want mankind, Hashem doesn't have, this is so important. Hashem, when we talk, because a lot of times I think that since we're coming from, the world and the Western thinking, everything, we judgment, and it sounds so harsh to us. When Hashem said, when the Ramchal is saying that there was this period where Hashem said, okay, until now you can earn it, and now after this you can't. Now you're stuck in this lowly state. The purpose wasn't like, okay, now you guys lost out. I'm not interested in you anymore. Right? I don't want anything good for you anymore. You didn't do what I asked you to do. I gave you all these generations. How many chances can I give you? And you blew it. That's not what it's like, right? The Kodesh Baruch Hu only wants good for every one of his creations. That's all he wants for every single one of his creations. So even though all these nations did blow it in that sense, they didn't do it. They didn't step up in the way that Avram Avinu stood up, right? So, but nevertheless, the Kodesh Baruch Hu he didn't want them to, it's not like now there's no purpose for them. He wanted to give them an ability to have a spiritual experience, even in the state that they're in. So he said he gave them a soul, right? What I understand from this, Ramchal, I don't know. What I understand from this is that he kind of gave them something new at this state, right? And the state after Matan Torah, he gave them a soul, which is similar to the souls of the Jewish people.
There is a time I read that it's the time of the Mashiach that the whole wave of conversions It will terminate it, actually.
At a certain point, it's going to stop.
That's what I read.
Yeah.
So it must be very close to that period of time.
That, halavai, I don't know. I mean, only halavai, because that means that, redemption is going to, we have different sources for that. We have different sources that say that, but we don't know exactly.
I don't know.
But going back in, so we're saying here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the nations of the world a certain type of soul, which is similar to the soul of Am Yisrael, right? For those of you who have tasted a little bit of Tanya, so you know that it talks about the different kind of soul between Jew and non-Jew. Huh?
5 levels or so? Oh, no.
There's a lot of soul talk over there, Baruch Hashem and Tanya. But and one of the things is that it talks about the different nature of the soul of the Jewish people and the nature of the soul of non-Jewish people, right? And it's also a very difficult piece for people to understand. I don't know if we can fully understand it. It's just things that we have passed down in our tradition.
Talking about
right?
the Tanya.
In the Tanya, right.
He's talking about it's a very very difficult concept.
Very difficult concept.
That it's the same Jew who had two different natures.
Right. Two different parts.
Two parts. It has a spiritual soul and a materialistic soul.
Right.
And one tries to devour the other. So.
Yeah, and so, but the important, I think the stress here from the Ramchal, right, in this sentence, is the compassion that the Baruch Hu had, and he said, it's not lost. I still want you to. Afa pisha in madragatam madragat tishmot Yisrael ela shvala mehem arbe v'yu lehem mitzvot yiknu behem atzlacha gufit v'nafshit gam ken kefi ma she'raui lebechinata v'hen mitzvot b'nei Noach. Right, so Kadosh Baruch Hu gave them these souls, and even though the souls are not the same as Am Yisrael souls, because Am Yisrael has a spiritual DNA that's different, that's more refined, that's higher in that sense. It doesn't mean, Agav, it doesn't mean that a Jew is necessarily more refined than a non-Jew. It just means that his DNA, he received a DNA that's more refined, right? But we still have our free choice here, right? You can right? I'm not gonna go too far into that, but you guys get the picture. Like just because a person is born Yankiv ben Moshe doesn't mean that he's automatically on a much higher level. It just means that he has this spiritual potential.
You have to work for it.
Right, and another person who's born not within the folds of Am Yisrael might be born with a spiritual DNA, which is a set of that's much more challenging, right? But Hakol Lefi HaMaaseh. I want to share with you guys what it says in Tana Debei Eliyahu. It's an amazing Tana Debei Eliyahu. Now, Tana Debei Eliyahu is one of our most amazing midrashim. Tana Debei Eliyahu. I don't know. You call it a midrash, but it's not really a midrash. It's part midrash. It's part It's teachings that there was one of our Amoraim named Rabbi Anan, and him, like many of our tzaddikim, had it's not daily, but a very common chavrusa with Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu Navi used to teach him Torah, and what's different about it is that most people that have a Gilu Eliyahu, it's a very private experience. It's an unbelievable spiritual experience. It's a private experience, and they don't really talk about it, right? Rabbi Anani wrote down all that Eliyahu Navi taught him, and that's the book Tana Debei Eliyahu. It's an amazing book, and he says over there, one of the things he says a lashon of shavua, like I swear to you, he says everything is according to your deeds, everything. He said HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he said every single human being in this world, it says man, woman, child, Jew, non-Jew can receive Ruach HaKodesh. It's all dependent on his actions, right? That's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. A lot of people would like to argue that, but Eliyahu Navi said it. We can't argue with Eliyahu Navi, right? So everything has. So what we're talking about here, is not one is better, one is worse, one is higher, one is lower, Jew and non-Jew. It's just that there's a different nature that we're born with.
I think it was the Lubavitcher Rebbe who organized a special organization for non-Jews.
Oh, that's how we finish this here. How did Hashem give through Am Yisrael? What are the actions that you do to elevate yourself and to bring out your spiritual potential? mitzvahs, Taryag mitzvot, right?
There's-
The 613 mitzvot, which correspond to the 613 parts of your soul, which correspond to the 613 parts of your body, according to our Torah. And when you do that, you give yourself the spiritual sustenance to bring out your
what
potential.
I wanted to end up with was what the Rosh said. Instead of having non-Jews who want to be good Jews, you can be a good goy, and you don't have to be converted to Judaism.
Right. Exactly. That's so again. So the non-Jew has 7 mitzvot, the mitzvot b'nei Noach, in order to elevate his soul. In that sense, just like a Jew with his 613 mitzvot, right? And that's why it's such an important thing. That's why the Lubavitcher Rebbe, one of the only chachamim of all these generations, that made a stress to teach the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach.
Yes.
You had a question, Rabbi?
Yeah, actually, it's gonna be 2, but they are to the point. Okay, first one, I came from the community in São Paulo, and there's a rabbi there. He's a shalir from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I never went to him, but I, by coincidence, met some of his people, and he founded the Bnei Noah school, and he also leads the Bnei Noah movement in Brazil.
Amazing.
So Rabbi Gerenstadt. So now the thing is, when I met some of his Noahites, I was very surprised because some of them they're in between. They're not here and not there.
Yeah.
So they keep Shabbat, and some of them I was very surprised. They keep Shabbat to a very high level. It's
Yeah.
like it's almost if they were Orthodox Jews.
Right.
So is there something like a Ben Noah that does a mitzvah like with this level of effort? Do they have merits? How does this work? This is the first question. And second, after knowing about his movement, I went to the Masechet Sanhedrin. I don't know if it's the Daf 39A or B or something like that. But then there's something indicating that perhaps HaShem will judge the nations based on the 7 laws of Noah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that assessment is correct. So if the rabbi correct.
Yeah. The truth is, it's a major subject, and really for me to give it over properly, I'd want to do a little bit more research to really like get all the sources right. But from what I remember from looking into it, well, first of all, just experientially, I think that most people that are joining Noahide communities they're people who are just sincerely seeking a connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and they believe in the Torah. And most of them have, a lot of them have come from Christianity, and they've left Christianity. They don't believe in Christianity anymore.
Especially in Brazil, that's kind of
right. In America, I've met people, some leaders that know I moved like in America, it's the same thing. And like me and like you guys, I think they're on a journey, and they don't know exactly where they're going to land. Some people clearly say like, it's okay for me to be a non-Jew. These are my 7 mitzvahs, and I'm happy, I'm satisfied with that. And some people want more. And so they're seeking more, and so they want to keep more of the mitzvahs because it's good. Mitzvahs are good. Talmud luki tov. Taste, and you'll see Hashem is good. So I think it's a matter of each person on their path as opposed to like something being set. We've never really had a thing in history called of Noahide communities. That's a new thing. That's a wonderful, beautiful thing. And I have tremendous admiration for someone who's satisfied with the 7 mitzvahs. I'm not saying that everybody should be, but I think it's a beautiful thing. Like, okay, this is where I am, this is what I like, and this feels good, and this is right, and this is what Hashem wants from me, and for others, they feel a deeper calling, and they want to go further, and they want to, go through the conversion, and that's fine. I think that my belief is that every single action that a human being does in this world to bring himself closer to God, he's going to get reward for it. Period. Even a person is preparing for conversion, right? Until the second that he has his brit milah and he goes to the mikveh, he's really not required to do any mitzvot. So, but what if he was doing it for 15 years? He was preparing to convert. 10 years he was, right? Does he not get reward for all those mitzvot? I don't believe. I can't believe that, right? I can't believe because this is an effort of a person to try to come close to Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? I'm saying if it's done with sincerity, and there's no question that just like Am Yisrael is judged about our kiyum of the 613 mitzvot, the nations of the world are judged about their kiyum of the 7 mitzvot. And by the way, the 7 mitzvot, which you guys all know, the 7 mitzvot, the 7 halash, we go through them real quick. Belief in God, not to believe in any other gods, meaning no idol worship, to set up houses of judgment, Doesn't mean it has to be judgment according to the Shulchan Aruch, but houses of judgment. No adultery. What am I missing?
Animals.
Don't murder.
Ever min
Parts.
achai, no, not the, right?
Parts.
Murder and stealing,
We
right?
have also
So much of the world, much of the non-Jewish world are keeping a lot of those. You know, they're not thinking I'm doing this in order to keep one of the 7 Noahide laws. But I'll just finish on a story. There's a lot more to say about that. Just finish on a story. I was once on an airplane, and my kids were with me, and the little kids, they were jumping up and down, and I was very busy. I was sitting there next to a guy, and he said, "Do you happen to be a rabbi?" I said, "You got it right this time. What can I help you with?" He said, "So I wanted to ask you about the Nazarite." So we spoke about the Nazir, and after that, I said, "Can I ask you another question?" I said, "Yeah." He said, I have a community of people that we've broken away from our churches, and we're kind of leaving Christianity, and we're really, trying to go back to the source. What can you tell me about the names of God? I said, "Wow, that's pretty deep." I said, "Let me ask you this: have you ever heard of the 7 laws of Noah? Because that's really an introduction before we can talk about those deeper things." And he said, "Never heard about it." And I was amazed, really. I was really amazed that here you have this community of non-Jews in Texas. He afterwards we kept in touch. He wanted me to come teach in his community. Didn't work out, but Israel and Texas are a little bit far apart. But you have this community of people who are like they're disillusioned with the church, they're disillusioned with Christianity, and they're searching for how to serve God, and they've never heard of the 7 Noahide laws. It's an amazing thing. It's something. Tosfos talks about it, how the tradition kind of got lost among the non-Jews. In the early generations, they had a tradition for it, but it got lost, right? And that's why the Lubavitcher Rebbe was so stressing that we need to teach it to the nations of the world, right? We don't go teaching everybody should convert, but we should be teaching these are the 7 Noahide laws. This is how you make a just and a godly society as a non-Jewish nation. It's an amazing thing, because Baruch gave them that as a gift in his compassion, just like he gave us in his compassion the 613 mitzvot. There's ways to get close to him, right? All right, gentlemen, we'll continue. Be'ez Hashem. Very, very, very interesting, fascinating topic, and Be'ez Hashem should be the to'elis.
All right.